Welcome to Echo Nomad Radio. Today's story comes from a woman I'll call Rachel. She's 48 now, 5 years past her mother's funeral. For 30 years, Rachel carried a story about her mother. It went like this. Her mother was cold, critical, emotionally unavailable, the kind of woman who loved her daughter but didn't know how to show it. Then, 3 years after her mother's death, Rachel finally opened the box of letters she'd left behind. What she found didn't just change her understanding of her mother. It inverted every memory she had, every moment of distance, every criticism, every silence. This is the story of what happens when you discover the truth too late to say, "I'm sorry," or "I understand now." Here's what Rachel told me. I was 45 when my mother died. Lung cancer, 6 months from diagnosis to the end. We weren't estranged. We talked every few weeks, saw each other on holidays, had a perfectly cordial relationship that felt like we were performing the roles of mother and daughter rather than actually being close. At her funeral, people told me how much she loved me, how she talked about me constantly, how proud she was. I smiled and said, "Thank you," and thought, then why didn't she ever tell me that? After she died, I inherited a house full of her things. Most of it I donated or threw away, but there was one box, a locked wooden box in her bedroom closet that I couldn't bring myself to open. The key was taped to the bottom with a note, "For Rachel, when you're ready." I carried that box from her house to mine, from my apartment to my new house when I moved, from room to room for 3 years without opening it. I told myself I wasn't ready, that I'd open it someday, that whatever was inside could wait. The truth? I was afraid of what I'd find. I was right to be afraid, but not for the reasons I thought. Growing up, my mother was functional. That's the word I use when people ask. She made sure I had everything I needed. Food, clothes, a clean house, help with homework. She showed up to school events. She never missed a parent-teacher conference. But she was also absent in the ways that mattered. She didn't hug me, didn't say, "I love you," didn't ask about my feelings or my dreams or what was going on in my inner world. When I tried to talk to her about emotional things, she'd redirect to practical matters. "Mom, I'm scared about starting high school." "You'll be fine. You're smart. Just focus on your grades." "Mom, I think I'm depressed." "Everyone feels sad sometimes. Go for a walk. That'll help." She wasn't cruel. She wasn't neglectful. She just wasn't warm, wasn't soft, wasn't the mother I saw my friends have. I spent my 20s in therapy unpacking this, built a whole narrative. My mother was emotionally stunted. She loved me in the only way she knew how, but it wasn't enough. I had to grieve the mother I needed and accept the mother I had. I got good at explaining her to people. My mom, she's not a bad person. She's just not emotionally available. She doesn't do feelings. That's just how she is. I thought I'd made peace with it. I thought I understood her limitations. I thought the work was accepting that she'd never change and building my life around that reality. I had no idea I was wrong about all of it. In my 30s, I put distance between us, not dramatically, just stopped calling as often, stopped trying to have deep conversations, stopped hoping she'd suddenly become the warm, emotionally available mother I'd always wanted. When she got sick, I showed up. I was there. I helped manage her care. I sat with her in the hospital. But I didn't tell her the things you're supposed to tell your dying mother. I didn't say thank you for everything, or I love you, or you were a good mom. Because I didn't feel those things, not fully. I felt dutiful, like I was doing what a daughter is supposed to do, but not connected, not close. The last conversation we had, 2 days before she died, she was barely conscious. But she opened her eyes, looked at me, and said, "You turned out so strong. I'm proud of who you became." I said, "Thanks, Mom." That was it. She died the next morning while I was at home sleeping. I didn't cry at her funeral. I felt empty, relieved even that the obligation was over, that I could move on without the low-grade guilt of not being closer to her. I didn't know that 3 years later, I'd open a box and realize I'd spent my entire life completely misunderstanding the woman who raised me. I opened the box on what would have been her 72nd birthday. I don't know why that day. Maybe because I'd been thinking about her more. Maybe because 3 years felt like enough distance. Maybe because I was finally ready to face whatever was inside. The box was full of letters, dozens of them. Some in envelopes, some loose, all in my mother's handwriting. The first one I picked up was dated the year I was born. It started, "Dear Rachel, you're 3 months old today. You don't know this yet, but..." I sat on my bedroom floor and started reading. They weren't letters to me. They were letters for me, written across 30 years, unsent, unshared, hidden in a box I was never supposed to find until she was gone. The first few were about her pregnancy, her fears, her hopes, her absolute terror that she wouldn't be a good mother because of what her own mother had done to her. That stopped me. What her own mother had done to her. I kept reading. Letter after letter, she documented things I never knew. Things she'd never told me. Things she deliberately kept from me. My grandmother, her mother, had been severely mentally ill, undiagnosed bipolar disorder, my mother suspected, violent, unpredictable, alternated between smothering love and terrifying rage. My mother wrote about being locked in closets as a child, being told she was worthless one day and the most special person in the world the next, never knowing which version of her mother she'd get. She wrote, "I swore I would never do to you what she did to me. I swore I would give you stability, predictability, safety, even if that meant keeping my distance, even if that meant you thought I was cold." I put the letter down. My hands were shaking. There was another letter dated the year I turned 7, the year I remembered asking her why she never hugged me like other moms hugged their kids. In the letter, she wrote, "Rachel asked me today why I don't hug her more. I wanted to. God, I wanted to pull her close and never let go. But I'm so afraid. What if I hold on too tight? What if I smother her the way my mother smothered me? What if I can't tell the difference between love and control? So I keep my distance. I let her have space. I let her breathe. Even though it breaks my heart every time she looks at me like she's not sure I love her." I started crying, not quiet tears, sobbing. There were letters about every major moment in my life. My first day of school, my first heartbreak, the year I went to college and barely called home. One letter, written when I was 19. "Rachel is pulling away from me. I can feel it. She thinks I don't notice, but I do. She thinks I don't care, but I do. I care so much it's killing me, but I won't chase her. I won't guilt her into staying close. That's what my mother did, made me responsible for her emotional needs, made me feel like I owed her my life. I won't do that to Rachel. If she needs distance, I'll give it to her, even if it means she thinks I don't love her. Even if it means I spend the rest of my life watching her from a distance, loving her in a way she can't see." I read for 6 hours straight. Every letter, every journal entry, every note she'd written but never sent. And with every page, my understanding of my entire childhood inverted. The coldness I thought was indifference, it was restraint, self-control, a deliberate choice not to repeat the pattern of her own mother's suffocating, unstable love. The criticism I thought was her being hard on me. It was her trying to prepare me for a world she knew was harsh, trying to make me strong enough to survive without her. The distance I thought meant she didn't care. It was the most profound act of love she knew how to give, letting me be free, letting me become my own person without the weight of her trauma shaping me. She'd been protecting me my whole life, not from the world, from her, and I never knew. After I finished reading, I sat in silence for a long time. Then I started going through my memories, one by one, reinterpreting everything through this new lens. I was 14. I'd just broken up with my first boyfriend. I was devastated. I went to my mom crying, and she said, "You'll be fine. First love never lasts. You'll meet someone better." I thought she was dismissing my feelings, being cold, not caring that I was in pain. But there was a letter from that same week. She wrote, "Rachel is heartbroken over that boy. I want to hold her and tell her I know how much it hurts. But I'm afraid if I sit in that pain with her, I'll make it bigger. I'll make her think heartbreak is something we drown in instead of something we survive. So I stay practical, I stay distant, and I watch her hate me for it. But she's strong, she'll survive this, and she won't learn to be dependent on someone else to fix her pain." She wasn't dismissing me. She was teaching me resilience, in the only way she knew how. I was 26. I'd just gotten engaged. I called her, excited, expecting her to be happy for me. She said, "That's nice, honey. Make sure you're doing this for the right reasons." I was furious. I thought she couldn't just be happy for me. Had to make it about caution and doubt. But there was a letter from that month. "Rachel is getting married. I'm terrified. Not because I don't want her to be happy, but because I see the signs. She's marrying him because he needs her, because he makes her feel essential. That's the same reason I married her father, and it destroyed me. But I can't tell her that without making her defensive. So I plant the seed. I ask the question. And I hope she's strong enough to be honest with herself." She was right. That marriage lasted 3 years. I was miserable. I'd married someone who needed me to fix him, and when I couldn't, it fell apart. She saw it. She tried to warn me, in her careful, distant way, and I resented her for it. The last year of her life, I visited her in the hospital after her first round of chemo. She looked so small, so frail. I asked, "Are you scared?" She said, "I've lived a good life. I have no regrets." I thought she was lying, performing strength, refusing to be vulnerable even when she was dying. But there was a letter from that same week, her handwriting shaky from the chemo. "Rachel asked if I'm scared." I told her no. The truth? I'm terrified, not of dying, but of dying without her knowing how much I loved her. How every decision I made was about protecting her. How the distance she felt was the hardest thing I've ever done. But I can't tell her that now. It would feel like a burden, like I'm asking her to carry my guilt. So I let her think I have no regrets. I let her think I'm at peace, because that's easier for her to carry than the truth. She died carrying the weight of loving me in a way I couldn't see, and I died a little when I realized that. I'm 48 now, 5 years past her death, 2 years past opening that box, and I finally understand my mother. She was a woman who grew up in chaos, who was loved in a way that hurt, who learned that love and control were the same thing, who spent her entire adult life terrified of becoming her mother. So she made a choice, a deliberate, painful choice. She chose to love me at a distance, to give me space to become myself without the weight of her trauma shaping me. to let me be free even if it meant I thought she was cold. She broke the cycle of her mother's suffocating, unstable love by giving me something her mother never gave her: room to breathe. But in breaking that cycle, she created a different kind of pain. I grew up feeling unloved, not because I was unloved, but because her love looked like absence. She couldn't tell me the truth while she was alive, couldn't explain why she kept her distance, because explaining would have meant burdening me with her trauma, making me responsible for understanding her pain. And that, making your child responsible for your emotional needs, was the one thing she swore she'd never do. So she stayed silent, stayed distant, and let me think what I thought. Because to her, that was love. The letters weren't an apology. They were an explanation, a context I could only receive after she was gone, after it was too late for her truth to burden me with guilt or obligation. She gave me the truth when I could finally hold it without owing her anything in return. That's the most devastating gift I've ever received. Rachel is 48 now. She keeps the letters in her bedroom, reads them sometimes when she needs to remember, not to feel better, but to remember the full truth about the woman who raised her. Here's what Rachel learned too late. Sometimes the people who seem the most absent are carrying the most. Sometimes distance is protection. Sometimes coldness is restraint. Sometimes the parent who doesn't hug you is the parent who's terrified they'll hold on too tight. We build narratives about our parents based on what we can see, but we can't see their trauma, their fears, the cycles they're trying desperately not to repeat. Rachel spent 30 years thinking her mother was emotionally unavailable. She was wrong. Her mother was emotionally controlled, choosing distance over dysfunction, choosing Rachel's freedom over her own need to be close. Ask yourself, what narrative are you carrying about your parent that might be incomplete? What would change if you knew their full story? What would you say to them if you could see the weight they carried that you couldn't see as a child? Here's the brutal truth Rachel has to live with. She can't apologize. She can't say, I understand now. She can't tell her mother, you did the right thing, or your love wasn't invisible. I just couldn't see it. The letters gave her clarity, but clarity doesn't undo 30 years of misunderstanding. If your parent is still alive, even if the relationship is complicated, even if they seem cold, even if you don't understand them, consider this. You might not have the full story, and you might not get it until it's too late to do anything with it. Rachel wishes she'd asked her mother one question before she died. What are you protecting me from? Because sometimes the answer to that question reveals everything. Sometimes the parent who seems the least loving is the one loving you the hardest, in the only way they know how. And sometimes we don't see that until we're holding their letters in our hands, crying on the floor, wishing we could tell them we finally understand. Rachel's mother broke the cycle of her own mother's suffocating love. But in breaking it, she paid a price, being misunderstood by the daughter she was trying to save. She was willing to pay that price. That's how much she loved her. This is Echo Nomad Radio, where we look back with the clarity we didn't have then and sit with what we can't change now. Thank you for listening to this story with me. Subscribe for the next story. It's already here.